And good afternoon, and welcome to another edition of Vulcans Football 2015. This week we will take a look back at the fourth week of the Vulcan football season, or fifth week, something like that. It's starting to blend together, but we'll cover a lot because there was a lot to talk about this week in both the California Vulcans game and the PSAC in general. I'm your host, Gary Smith, and as always, making his trip over from One Hamer Way, which may or may not be the actual address of Hamer Hall, is Sports Information Director Matt Kiefer. Matt, I wasn't sure if we had anything to talk about today, but it turned out to be an exciting weekend in athletics on Saturday.
It's one of those things, if you watched the first half and you left at halftime thinking you knew the result of the game, when you woke up Sunday morning, if you looked in the newspaper, you looked online, social media later on that night, you'd be thinking, there's no way it's the same game I was watching. Second half comeback by the Vulcans was one of those for the ages, basically down 17 at halftime, scored 35 points in the second half to find a way to win it. They had the lead midway through the fourth quarter, and then another interception late in the game sealed a victory for the Vulcans. It's becoming a recurring theme this year for them.
Well, I mean, Saturday started out it was awful. It was the tail end of a storm system that came in. So, I mean, when we got there to set up, I mean, it was rainy, it was miserable. And momentum's a funny thing in football because if you go back a week, at Edinburgh, California, great first half, kind of struggled a little bit in the second half. If you go to Seton Hill's game, they were back and forth with Slippery Rock. And it seemed like the Seton Hill second half against Slippery Rock carried over to the first half of Saturday, and the second half of California's game against Edinburgh filtered over to Saturday. And it was just one of those things, you didn't know what was going on because on paper you look at the numbers, California, you figured would have put up a lot of points in the first half, Seton Hill back and forth. But then by halftime, you come out halftime, California has all the momentum in the world. It was just one of those freaky games that you have once or twice a decade, really, because, as you said, that was a comeback for the ages.
I mean, it's one of those things I think you and I have seen Seton Hill the last couple of years. They're one of those teams that's only won 4 or 5 times going into this year. The team we saw Saturday shows they are not just a win wonder against Slippery Rock. They're going to knock somebody else off this year at some point, if not give multiple people fits with that offense they run. It's just one of those things that the carryover with that offense, it's so hard to stop. It's probably one of the better things for the Vulcans that they actually beat Slippery Rock last week, Seton Hill that is. They knew, okay, can't take this team lightly. They are for real. I mean, Coach Keller has said multiple times that this is a team on the rise. The coach in his third year, they're bringing in the players he wants, bringing in the system he wants. This is the first time we faced Seton Hill as a member of the PSAC when they've actually had a quarterback at quarterback. Every time we face them, it's always like some wide receiver backup who'd been shifting around positions. And you saw on Saturday what Christian Strong was all about when he gets enough time to throw. Which of those 3 5-step drops, you're going to get plenty of time to throw because hardly any defense in the country can get to you on that short of a drop.
And as you mentioned at the top of the show, California down 21-3 going into halftime. And you got to give California a lot of credit making every adjustment they needed to make because it was an all-hands-on-deck kind of a comeback. It wasn't just, oh, okay, we're going to run a couple kicks back or pick sixes or, Seton Hill's going to just go away and shoot themselves in the foot. That wasn't the case. That was a case of 2 teams giving it all they got. And, California coaching staff did a great job making adjustments both on offense and defense. And the defense, and we'll talk about this, I think saved the game a couple times. There were 2, we won't call them goal line stands because Seton Hill walked away with points, but those 8 points that Seton Hill left on the board trading in field goals for touchdowns, that was the difference in the game.
Exactly. I mean, Seton Hill was putting up those 12 played drives, about 5 or 6 yards here or there. It seemed like every single time. Every drive was at least 4 or 5 minutes. So you knew when you got the ball back, you had to score quick. Well, eventually the defense held them enough that when they were in field goal territory, and a close game with the lead, Seton Hill played it smart. You take the points. You take the field goals when you get them. They have a good kicker who was able to make those kicks. And they probably had to feel comfortable with where they were at, especially even after the Vulcans scored the game-winning touchdown eventually on that 4th and 1, figuring, okay, we have the ball. We can go 80 yards, no big deal. We've been doing it all day. But the Vulcans made that one big stand at the end again to seal that victory. Isaiah Scott coming up huge right in front of the goal line there and then getting out a couple yards so he'd be able to take a knee safely, no worries at the end of the game.
And it seems like it's been the same script for the last couple of weeks. California coming up with just enough plays at the end. But going back a little bit into the second half on the offense, Kawan Scott stretching that defense twice for long touchdowns, just burning. I mean, there was separation like you won't see, and you'll see on the highlights. But it was great to watch.
Kawan is truly one of those special players. I think he was the 6th or 7th player in school history to go over 2,000 yards for a career. And I just ran the numbers before I came over. He's by far of those guys. he has, I think, 3 yards per catch more for his career than anyone else of those guys, just because of his big play ability. Anytime you average over 20 yards in a season, you're pretty good, and he's 5th in the country right now in yards per catch. So when he gets the ball, he's making big things happen. It's not just a first down; it's a good chunk of yards.
And it seemed like those big plays, that got the entire offensive rhythm because, you need to be comfortable, and it seemed like Harris and company were comfortable on offense, just going back there, taking the drops and throwing up, and also having number 9 almost back to 100% on Saturday with that great bubble screen that he broke for a go-ahead touchdown. I mean, that's got to, when the California offense is firing on all cylinders, it's a scary, scary monster to look at.
I mean, it's 4th and 1. The Vulcans been going deep a lot to Quan Scott in that half. You didn't really think, okay, with Jimmy Wheeler, the way he was running the ball, or Franklin in the backfield, you figure, okay, one of those guys, or even Harris on this run up the middle. Nope. Coach Keller calls up a bubble screen on the right-hand side there, and Gary Brown makes a couple guys miss, and then, of course, he does what he does and takes it for that touchdown. Similar to that Virginia State game 1 of the year when they had the bubble screen go all those yards.
And you mentioned Jimmy Wheeler and Franklin in the backfield. If California, going into the as we go deeper into the season, we're getting into the heart of PSAC West play, being able to win throwing the ball and being able to win running the ball, I mean, that's something that is going to be, great for the Vulcans going into, as we have a tough slate coming up, and we'll talk about that. But this is the meat of the schedule. This is where, you might make a playoff run, or teams might shoot themselves in the foot and, play themselves out of playoff contention. But California having all those weapons, you got to feel good.
I mean, going into the year, they lost Nick Grissom at running back, and obviously last year he really came onto his own. He was one of those guys, okay, he's going to be a feature back this year. Franklin be the backup. Well, Grissom goes down in spring ball, and then you have Franklin, okay, well, he's going to be our main back, but we really don't know what we have behind him. Nate Goldsmith played well the first couple weeks, but he suffered an injury. Jimmy Wheeler comes on the scene on kick returns and looks fabulous there. Then they give him some more touches, and you can see what he can do in the backfield. Now you throw in Derek Fiore out of the mix. He caught a touchdown this week. You have those nice 3 pieces you can keep moving in and out in the backfield, in addition to what you have on the outside and the tight end. Vulcans are one of those teams that has probably the best and skilled guys in the PSAC, looking across the starters at least. Depth may not be there to what it's been in years past, but when you look at their starting lineup, it's hard to match anyone in the PSAC with a better skills position than the Vulcans have right now. And
because it was such a wild game, we have a lengthy highlight package to show everyone, so we're going to go to that highlight package of Saturday's game against Seton Hill. And then immediately after the commercial break, we're going to look at last year's homecoming victory against this week's opponent, Slippery Rock, and then we'll take a tour around the PSAC because there was a lot of interesting storylines that are starting to play out across the PSAC. So here are the highlights from Saturday. You're watching Vulcans Football 2015 right here on CUTV.
Brazil on for the kick. It's up, and it is good. So Brazil gets the Vulcans on the board first. Going back to throw. Down the middle of the field, and he has a receiver, and it's wide open. Brown, touchdown. Strong, hands off to the fullback, and he's into the end zone. That's number 26. That is Khalil Howard. Screen pass, great blocking, and he'll get into the end zone. That's Darden. It's quickly 20-3. Harris, back to throw. Deep downfield, he has a receiver, that's Kawan Scott. It's a touchdown! Kawan Scott on the deep connection. Baltimore, kick up, and it was almost blocked, and it is up and good. But Harris looks to throw, throws it over Fiore. He's gonna get into the end zone. Touchdown, California. Strong, downfield, there's a man wide open. And that's going to be a Seton Hill touchdown. And just like that, that play comes back to haunt California. Harris throws downfield. Kawan Scott yet again. Touchdown, California. California responds with a deep ball of their own to make it a 7-point game. Baltimore's kick up, and it is good. Franklin's in the end zone anyways. Touchdown, California. Harris fakes handoff to Fiore. And it's complete. Gary Brown, he has a block. He's going downfield. He's got no one there. Gary Brown breaks the man. Touchdown, California. And California, down 21-3, is back in this game. as well, and it's intercepted. Moreland steps out of bounds. Downfield, intercepted!
The time is now, the place is here. Stop running, face your fear. When it all comes down to this, you only get one shot, can't afford to miss. The time is now, the place is here. Stop running, face your fear. When it all comes down to this, you only get one shot, can't afford to miss. So, let's get it, let's go. Go hard and go home.
Since 1937, the Student Association Incorporated, known as SAI, has served the Cal U student body by providing activities, programs, and services. Every enrolled student has the ability to take part in over 125 different clubs and organizations. Managing participation in every SAI activity is easy with OrgSync, a powerful tool for staying connected. Located 1 mile from campus, the SAI farm has 94 acres of meeting and recreational space. SAI, it's your student association. For almost 30 years, CUTV has been the campus and community home for local news, sports, and entertainment. Broadcast in 100,000 homes in southwestern Pennsylvania, CUTV provides complete coverage of Vulcan sports as well as high school football coverage. Broadcast weekly live, CUTV News Center provides coverage of local and campus events, weekend weather, sports highlights, and feature stories. For more information on CUTV, check us out on the web, friend us on Facebook, or follow us on Twitter.
Makes the handoff, gonna throw it. Wide open receiver, Paul Butler. He's running, he's at the 20. He's at 15, 10, 5. Touchdown for California on a 4th. Snap, hold, kick. It is good, just barely over the crossbar though. It's gonna be a handoff. Goes to the outside, gets to the outside. Nick Grissom's going into the end zone. It's 13-3 California. Harris throwing again, has a man in the end zone. It's caught! California touchdown. Harris back to throw. Throws it in the corner. Gary Brown has it. Gary Brown has a touchdown. California. Newsock going to throw. Over the middle. Has a man in the end zone. It's complete. Touchdown, Rock. 2nd and 10 coming up. Newsock back to throw. That one's tipped. It's intercepted. That's intercepted by California's defense. He's running with it. Cannot tell who that is. It's tripped up. That's Jawan Turner. It's going to be a handoff. Terrell Roberson going into the end zone. 9 touchdowns for Roberson in 4 weeks. It's going to be a handoff to Durden. He's going to go to the end zone. 35-16 the score now. Snap, hold. It's up. And it's good. So Nuzzo's kick is good. Newsock back to throw again. Going downfield. Intercepted! Chaz Field comes back and redeems himself in a big way. Newsock handing it off. Or actually, no, he's going to keep it himself. He lost the ball. Let's see who comes up with it. Let's see who has possession of this football. Waiting for the huddle. It's California football! Kick is up. Kick is good. So California added 3 more points to the board. That one's complete. Into the end zone. Ashawn Tucker. Harris is going to throw. Harris throws it over the middle. It's caught. What are they going to mark? Touchdown, Caligue. Kawan Scott plunges into the end zone, makes it 47-26. Newsock throws it. It's intercepted. Jordan Bowman comes up with it. He's running. running. Midfield. Looks like he bobbled it a little bit. Still has it at the 44 in Slippery Rock territory.
And welcome back to Vulcans Football 2015, right here on CUTV. I'm your host once again, Gary Smith, joined as always every Tuesday morning by Sports Information Director Matt Keifer. And Matt, we took a look into the Wayback Machine. Well, not way back, just a little way back to a year ago whenever California and Slippery Rock tangled once again. It was a homecoming day. As we were talking off camera, both of us forgot a lot of that because, a lot's happened since then. But California, and probably their biggest win of the year last year, upset a nationally ranked Slippery Rock team. And this is a rivalry of the past couple of years that seems like, it rivals the IUP rivalry. It really does. That's a lot of use of the word rival. I'm sorry, English teachers out there, but that's how important this rivalry is.
It's one of those things. It's just Slippery Rock dominated for so long, sort of like IUP in the series, like for 15, 20 years, they won every game. Then when John Luckhart came and the program started turning itself around, Cal won a lot of those games, I think 6 or 7 in a row. And then ever since, it's sort of going back and forth, a lot of tight games. But Slippery Rock really had the advantage, especially at Slippery Rock. You and I have seen when you go up there, it's never an easy place to play. It's always windy. It seems like it's always cold. Weather is always an issue. So hopefully this week a little bit more normal, like last week was almost, and one of those easy fall days you can plan for. But it's never the case there. You know what you're always getting. They have one of the longest tenured coaches in the conference and in the country. So he's been around the block. Coach Keller's not going to throw him anything he's not used to seeing from Cal. You know what Cal's going to do, and they're just going to have to play probably their best overall game to get the victory at Slippery Rock.
And in those periods since the rivalry has been back and forth, the one common denominator is this game's meant something. It's meant either getting a team in the postseason, getting a team out of the postseason, jockeying for position for the PSAC championship game. So it's not like, every year one team's been up, one team's been down. Both of these teams have been near the top of the PSAC West standings for about the past 8-9 years.
I think almost going back to 05 or 06, either Cal or Slippery Rock has basically won the West, and then Slippery Rock's represented the West a couple times here in the state game. They won it last year against Bloomsburg, then they went 1-out in the NCAA playoffs, but still, what Slippery Rock's done in the last probably 3 or 4 years since Nigel Barksdale, that's a name you and I remember.
Sir Nigel.
But once he came in, that sort of rejuvenated the program, and they've been riding that hot streak ever since, and they're a running team. There's no doubt about it. They're one of the best, rivaling basically Bloomsburg in terms of one of the most potent rushing attacks in the PSAC.
And bolstering that attack early in the year, they had their lead running back injured, but he's back, and that's going to cause quite a bit of problems for the California defense and any defense because he's a special player.
I mean, Shamar Green last year, he was probably one of those guys who could have been a Harlan Hill guy. He rushed for about 1,500 yards, had the double-digit touchdowns. One of those guys every game you had to account for. Cal did a nice job controlling him last year in that game, and I think that's sort of how you saw the game get to where it did in terms of the score, because you knew back last year you wanted Slippery Rock to pass because their quarterback wasn't their strength, their running attack was. Well, this year they have a Youngstown State transfer under center. Also now, in addition to Green, when he was out, Durden was in there, and he's a Kent State transfer from 2 or 3 years ago. He had back-to-back 100-yard games and scored 6 touchdowns when Green was out. So now they have a nice 1-2 combination, sort of like Wheeler and Franklin for Cal. You don't know really what you're getting. Brock Jones is basically the only guy in the PSAC now who's the one-man band, and again, he's doing a heck of a job like he usually does.
And that's still one of the greatest names in the PSAC is Brock Jones. But with Slippery Rock adding to the game this week, not only is it 2 teams with 1 loss trying to jockey for position, it's also Slippery Rock's homecoming. That always adds a little bit of spice to the game.
It's one of those things that it's not an easy place to play ever. I think 2 years ago you could probably ask James Harris. It was probably one of his least favorite games he's ever played. Really struggled in the first half. Got pulled, I think, in the second half, and still just no offense for the Vulcans in that contest. A couple years before that, Vulcans had a chance to really make an NCAA run at it, lose that game. One of those games when one team comes out, one color goes back in at halftime or before the game switches back to jersey, trying to mess with you mentally. So it's one of those games, a lot of penalties in that game. Rashad Johnson, Thomas Mayo, 2 guys that were big players, and they both had some couple costly penalties in that game for the Vulcans.
And I remember that game very well because I remember we set up on the visiting side, and I'm in the truck doing some stuff, and my graduate assistant at the time, Allison Steinheiser, came in. She said that Slippery Rock is wearing black, and I thought we were going to have to take her to the hospital because she passed. I'm like, Slippery Rock's green and white, but they wore the the Combat Black. And I tell you what, sometimes that makes it different because Slippery Rock came out a little bit more fired up for that game.
It's one of those things that at the time Cal was that top dog everybody wanted to knock off. And at the time, and since then, Cal's still one of those top teams, but there really isn't a dominant team, as you'll see in the PSAC standings here in a little bit. There's a lot of teams, and looking at preseason polls, you can see why they're exactly that. They're just preseason. They don't matter much. It almost basically is flipped on its head with Clarion at the top and now Gannon and Mercier's at the bottom.
And let's take a look at what happened. That's a great segue. See, one day we're going to switch roles. Matt's going to host, and I'm going to do the analysis, and we're going to see if anybody notices. And we'll do some kind of like fundraiser or something. But let's take a look back at this past Saturday's action because it was crazy all across the board. The Seton Hill, California game, of course, we've talked about. You saw the highlights. Epic comeback for California, winning 38-34. Slippery Rock Gannon, 41-14.
Two teams that lost their opening game, so one of those teams you knew was really going to be struggling, and Slippery Rock managed to win that ultra important game of two 0-1 teams.
And that's a game Slippery Rock going up to Erie, putting it on Gannon. So interesting if Gannon can rally the troops coming down the last couple weeks of the season, or last second half of the season basically, or if they just fall by the wayside. Clarion, surprising 5-0, the only remaining undefeated team in the PSAC, either East or West, defending home field against Mercier's 41-27. And Matt, Mercier, same boat as Gannon, 2 quick losses.
That's one of those things you can't afford 2 losses in West play, especially just right out of the gate. 2 teams that had really high expectations. But again, 2 teams with high expectations and aren't always used to that. Cal had to live with that for so many years. It's a lot harder maintaining being the top dog rather than trying to climb up to be that.
And the lone remaining PSAC West game was the Lou Tepper Bowl between Edinboro and Indiana. IUP defending their home field 42-21 against an Edinboro team that is probably looking towards the future.
I mean, the Indiana running back, I think he had like 6 touchdowns in that game and over 200 yards. So they literally pulled the old Crimson Hawk, Harvey Tuck idea of just run the ball, run the ball, run the ball.
And as we switch over the PSAC East scores, you may want to hide some small children because there's some big numbers and crazy numbers. Westchester beating Lock Haven, no surprise there. Bloomsburg 63-0 over Cheney, no surprise there.
Those are 2 that you expect on paper every time.
Now, the number down here, I wasn't having any medical issues when I wrote it.
That's a basketball score.
Yeah. 5 overtime, Shippensburg, East Stroudsburg. I believe I read somewhere it's the longest game in Shippensburg history. Shippensburg getting the win 69-67 when East Stroudsburg unable to convert their 2-point conversion. Matt, as a fan, we'll go 2 ways. As a fan, what do you think of that game? And as a sports information director having to stat that game, what do you think?
As an SID, it absolutely is horrible. One, it's a 6 o'clock game, and then you're playing that many overtimes. It's just you want that to be done because all your other sports are wrapping up, and all those coaches will be like, hey, where's our stories? Hey, where's our stories? Where's our recaps? I'm like, I'm still messing around with a 5 overtime football game. But as a fan, it's one of those things, you've seen it now in the Big 12 almost every week, either Baylor or TCU just does that same idea. You don't really see 2 teams going back and forth like that unless those 2 meet, which will be a couple weeks here probably for the Big 12. Be great ratings for ESPN.
Well, as I was watching Brock Lesnar destroy the Big Show on Saturday night, I decided to jump on and see what the late scores were, and I saw that game was still going on. That was like about 10:30 this game was still going on. So my heart went out to everyone working that game because that's a long evening. That's a lot of points.
Mad props to Shippensburg for being able to get that highlight onto ESPN as well for their top plays. It's one of those things you just keep shooting and shooting because you know at the end of the day that's going to be one of those games you keep going back to year after year. It's just going back to the reels because nobody's going to really believe the score and believe the game. But that's one there. Matt Stoltz put up huge Harlan Hill numbers. I think the receiver for East Stroudsburg had 20 catches. It's one of those things, it's going to be hard to overpass those guys in the PSAC stat leaders just because 5 overtimes. They've played basically 2 or 3 more games than anyone else already just by playing that one game.
And the final game in the PSAC East, Millersville looking forward to 2016 or 2017, losing to Kutztown 47-14. And let's see how these scores affect the PSAC standings through the second week of conference play, or divisional play rather. As we said, Clarion, the surprise so far of 2015, 5-0 and 2-0.
First time 5-0, I think, since '83.
That's unbelievable because they've been down for a couple of years. So see if they'll be able to keep
their
that.
Their coach has basically already won probably Coach of the Year, and he's just coached half the season.
And as you see behind them, California, IUP, also 2-0 in the conference with 1 loss each, Slippery Rock. So that shows you how important this game is as you see Seton Hill, Gannon, Mercyhurst. Gannon and Mercyhurst both were in the top 1 or 2 in the preseason West polls. They're going to have a a long road to hoe to see if they can make it to either the PSAC championship game or the NCAA playoffs.
They're just going to have to take care of business. I think they might play each other here, maybe even this week, and then basically have to hope to win out and get a lot of help from everyone else.
And moving over to the PSAC East, at the top, Bloomsburg, Kutztown, Westchester, all 2-0. As you see on the right side, there are no PSAC East teams with less than 2 losses. So another scenario where these teams, someone's going to have to run the table to have a postseason berth probably.
It's one of those things. It's just how the schedule fell with Bloomsburg being Cal. They got that win against Cal, but if it wasn't for that win, Bloomsburg would probably be almost done for the year, even if they would win the East. Shippensburg still has a chance, given that offense they just showed last week, and even East Stroudsburg with their quarterback. Those two teams will definitely, as you saw, put up points against anybody, and they still have Lock Haven, Cheney, Millersville, so we're going to get some more video game numbers type coming later on this year, I'm sure.
And on that graphic, something didn't save. So the Shippensburg are not the Golden Rams right there. I forgot to switch things. It's very technical, so there's my one mistake. Hopefully my only mistake on the graphics this week. Let's look at the schedule this coming Saturday. A lot of important games. You see Gannon at Mercyhurst, so that's basically could be an elimination game.
The city game, I mean, whoever loses that game is basically just playing spoiler the rest of the year. And that's 2 teams there. I mean, this was expected to maybe be one of the games of the year in the West, and now it's basically do or die, and it may not even factor into too much, depending how the rest of the year plays out for everyone else ahead of them in the standings.
And besides that game and our game, of course, I would think our game is probably the best game or the most important game in the PSAC overall. But the other one that intrigues me is the IUP at Seton Hill because IUP took an early loss and Seton Hill has been playing better. So that's another one where who knows what could happen.
Contrasting styles. We saw Seton Hill pass the ball 66 times in that game. I think Strong still has ice on his arm. And IUP will run the ball 66 times in the game and have no issues not passing at all. So very contrasting styles. One's up and down. Another one's drag out the game. We'll see how it goes. And
here's the broadcast information for this Saturday's game. At Slippery Rock, it's a 2 o'clock kickoff. You can listen to that game live on 91.9 FM WCAL. That'll be live. And also, it'll be rebroadcast, hopefully, on Cal Vulcans or on CUTV Monday at 6, Tuesday at 4. It won't be live on Cal Vulcans. That's 2 graphic mistakes.
Oh, no, it is on CalVulcans.com. It's from Slippery
Oh, okay,
Rock's
excellent.
feed.
So I wasn't wrong.
Yeah, Slippery Rock is providing a free feed.
Excellent.
It's very similar, almost exactly the same idea as what CalVulcans.com has. Same web provider, everything. So you just click the play button right before game time. You get to watch the Vulcans. It's just not CUTV quality. That's all.
Ooh, excellent. So the graphic is a mistake. We're going to try and be there at CUTV. For CUTV, there's some issues with parking just because it's Slippery Rock's homecoming. They have I think field hockey or soccer right after, so it's going to be, and again, that's one of those, is you work in the business, you kind of feel for their staff having a turnover or something real quick, but we're still working on that. Worst case scenario, we'll have 1 camera with the CUTV announcers for Monday at 6, Tuesday at 4. Matt, real quick before we go, your MLB playoff predictions, as you have a horse in the race this year with the Blue Jays, and we have a horse in the race with the Pittsburgh Pirates. What are you picking in the next week?
Well, first time in 20 years. I'm just excited. I might have to see if I can get up to Canada and back in time for volleyball this weekend, but I'm not sure if that's going to be feasible. But 2 great wild card games. I think you have Arietta and Cole going in the NL. That's one of those things there. It's going to be fun to watch no matter who you're rooting for in that game. And I obviously got to go for the Pirates just because if not, I probably won't get back to my office from here, and I got to pick the Blue Jays because it's my team. So.
And hopefully next week we'll know a lot more about what's going to happen in MLB and also in the PSAC. Once again, you're watching Vulcans Football 2015. We'll see you next week, hopefully with exciting and successful highlights from a key PSAC West matchup at Slippery Rock. For Matt Keifer, I'm Gary Smith. We'll see you next week on Vulcans Football 2015.